Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm not going to complain because I brought this on myself by actually including the J7W1 in the list of aircraft I was willing to fly. If I had thought about it more, I probably wouldn't have, but since I did and it was requested, here it is. Now, I played 3 games in this aircraft to get the footage for this video, and it's actually going to be a pretty short video this time. I apologize. Next video I'm planning to do will be the TA-152, and I can actually stand that aircraft. This plane, it makes my head hurt flying this thing, honestly. There is no significant feature of this aircraft that I have found that's redeeming enough to actually fly this, or justify owning it, in my opinion. Supposedly it is very fast. Mine is stock, so that definitely has something to do with its speed, but even in fully upgraded reference test flights, I have not found this aircraft significantly faster at normal combat altitudes for simulated battles than the other aircraft it will fight. In fact, it's actually slower in most cases and will be caught by many of the aircraft it will face, i.e. the Tempest, Bearcat. I've caught these things in P-51s even, although I'm not sure if they were fully upgraded. I definitely don't see the J7W1 in combat very often, and I can definitely see why. In fact, I can probably count the number of times I've come across one of these aircraft on the fingers of one hand, maybe? Maybe it's a little more than that, but these things are super rare to come across. At least for me, anyways. I think the best thing about the J7W1 is that, well, it looks really cool. You know, I will give it that. It is a very exotic looking aircraft, and I believe only one of 2 pusher prop style of aircraft design in game, the other being the premium XP-55 Ascender in the American tech tree, which is even more rare than this to come across in simulator battles, at least in my experience. I've only seen one of them. The skin I have on my J7W1 is supposed to mimic the Sanka Mark B from the Skycrawlers movie, because the Sanka Mark B was heavily influenced by the design of the J7W1, if memory serves. They are very, very similar looking aircraft. Anyways, the other 2 good things I could come up with for the J7W1 would be its armament is actually pretty good. It's got 4 30mm cannons all mounted very close together in the nose, so it has a highly concentrated armament, so fairly accurate and hard hitting when you do actually hit. Unfortunately, the recoil from these 4 guns is very strong, so the nose tends to kick up quite a bit when you fire, as you're going to see here in a few seconds. The other thing about the J7 would be that it does dive pretty well for a Japanese aircraft. I don't think it particularly will outdive any of the Allied aircraft it'll face, but it's still pretty decent when it comes to dives. Now, unfortunately for the J7, since the engine is mounted in the back as well as the propeller, the rear visibility is quite bad, actually. I'd say about on par with the rear visibility of the F4U1 Corsair, for instance, if that gives you any idea of how bad it actually is. Unlike the majority of Japanese fighter aircraft, the J-7 turns like a battleship. It's so bad. Just don't turn fight with it, because it can't at all. I don't think there's anything that this thing will actually outturn. Nothing comes to mind at all. It's just so sluggish. The roll rate is also nothing to write home about, and the rudder authority isn't great either, which means that the J-7 is just all around a fairly sluggish aircraft. At least from my point of view. I have only flown this aircraft a total of 5 times. I don't plan to fly it anymore, but if you have more experience than that and want to enlighten me about this aircraft, then please feel free. But like I said, I probably won't fly this thing ever again. I just have no interest in it. Another thing is that unless you're rammed from behind by a friendly Ki-200, I have not been able to get this thing to enter any kind of a spin. I have no idea about the flight model either. There's very little I've actually been able to find on this aircraft, historically speaking. I did, however, find out that the J-7W1's design impressed the Imperial Japanese Navy so much that the aircraft was ordered into production even before its first test flight. And speaking of test flights, the J-7W1 only spent 45 minutes in the air before the war ended. There were 2 prototypes for the J-7W1 produced, and one of those 2 was shipped to the United States for testing, although I haven't been able to find if it was actually flown after it was shipped to the US. Currently, I believe it resides in storage at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum awaiting restoration, but I haven't been able to find very much on that. In War Thunder, the J-7W1 will face a lot of B-29s and B-17s, which usually it deals with pretty well thanks to its rather good armament. Unfortunately, the rate of climb is not exactly what I would call ideal, and unfortunately the ammunition for this armament is somewhat limited, so you'll have to be somewhat conservative with your ammunition if you plan to take out more than 1 or 2 bombers at a time. In this game on Berlin, I actually had Join in Progress enabled, which, as you can see, was a pretty big mistake, because I basically only got to take off and the game was pretty much done at that point. I did manage to shoot down a Year 2 and a Spitfire, but I would have liked to play for a bit longer than that. So in this final game, I had Join in Progress off, and by the time I reached the objectives, there's already a B-17 there. I do manage to get a hit into his right wing, setting him on fire. And as I'm looking around, I spot another enemy aircraft. It's much smaller, so definitely a fighter. I turn into it here, hoping for a head-on. It's a Spitfire, and he tries to pass underneath, and unfortunately for him, he's not able to escape the 30mm armament of this aircraft. Now, the next engagement here sort of, I think, showcases the problems I have with this aircraft. I tried to get a burst into the LA-9 to save my friendly 190D9, I think it is. And I'm actually pulling around as hard as I can here to try and get on this guy's tail. Like I said, the J-7 is not the most maneuverable of aircraft, so it takes some time. And unfortunately we lose the 190. I dive after the LA-9, who split S's. I decide not to follow him. I would much rather return to a safer altitude and try and boom and zoom the guy. But as I'm climbing away, I get engaged by an enemy aircraft, which I don't quite see actually until I go into a dive because of the really bad rear visibility. As you can see, I'm sort of turning and banking and looking around for what exactly attacked me there. It ends up being a Spitfire, but I didn't really know that at the time because I couldn't see it clearly enough. I try to dive away, but I figure he's probably actually going to be able to catch me if I run, and because of a slight error in judgment, I actually end up running towards the enemy airfield. I decide that since I won't be able to outrun him, I should try and at least fight a little bit, maybe force an overshoot here, which does end up happening, but unfortunately I kind of screw it up as he goes out in front of me. And I'm being attacked here by the LA-9 that shot down the friendly 190 a few seconds ago. Yeah, that was just terrible aim. And basically this is the end of me here. I go for an overshoot with this LA-9, and I'm getting really slow at this point, and slow speed makes the J7 even more sluggish. The LA-9 does sort of overshoot though, but I never end up getting a shot at the guy. And a third enemy comes in and my fate is basically sealed. I actually tried to get the Spitfire to ram me here, but it doesn't happen. And I was going so slow that the LA-9 just had a perfect shot to be able to just take his time and line up on me there. So yeah, that's the J7. Not exactly a fan of the thing. In fact, like I said, I'll probably not fly it again. I just think it's awful, really, really bad, and I can't see a reason to actually own the plane, personally. Other than looks, because it does look cool. Anyways, guys, hopefully this was a good enough video for you guys that requested the aircraft. If not, I'm sorry. But I really hate the thing. And yeah, that's all I have to say. I don't like it. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and maybe I'll catch you next time. And until then, happy hunting.